Hello, I'm Miss Tyna, and welcome to the Downtown Reno Library virtual bomb shelter tour. We're excited to share this historic feature of our architecturally unique library designed by Hewitt C. Wells, which is also listed on the National Register of Historic Places. First, some background information. On July 25, 1961, President Kennedy addressed the nation. I will attempt my best presidential voice here. My fellow Americans, nuclear weapons and the possibility of nuclear war are facts of life we cannot ignore today. He went on to describe the threat of war brought on by the Berlin crisis. So what was the Berlin crisis? Well, on November 10, 1958, the Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev demanded that Western powers, the Western powers of the United States, Great Britain, and France, pull their forces to leave West Berlin within 6 months. This was Khrushchev's attempt to reunify West Berlin with East Berlin. But the president at the time, Eisenhower, believed that protecting the freedom of West Berlin required an ongoing U.S. presence. A 3-year crisis ensued over the future of Berlin. It culminated in 1961 with the building of the Berlin Wall, which was a chain-link fence put up in the middle of the night. It was federally mandated that all public buildings built during this time had to have a bomb shelter, and this very library was constructed during the height of the Cold War, and therefore was subject to this requirement. Many buildings in our local area, including casinos, incorporated bomb shelters within their existing structures. With the end of the threat of nuclear attack, many were able to repurpose their shelters for future use. This, however, was not the case for our shelter, which is located beneath the library. I'm currently in the garden level in the computer room near our reference collection. This vent here seems pretty much like a normal vent you might find in any building, right? Well, we are actually standing at the entrance of the bomb shelter. Shelters would have normally had some signage to notify the public of its location. However, when the threat ended, the signs came down. Let's go ahead and open her up, shall we? We're currently located under the front window and entrance of the building on Center Street. Come on in. As you can see, we have some remnants of supplies. The Office of Civil Defense provided supplies to be stocked in marked community shelters. These supplies were very minimal survival supplies, which would have provided shelterees with food, water, and sanitation needs for an allotted 2-week shelter stay. The plan was to provide each shelteree with 1 quart of water per day, 700 calories of food per day, sanitation supplies, and radiation detection equipment. You're probably wondering the sanitation bit. The barrels for the water were meant to be reused as toilets once the water was used up in them. Then we have also the Snuggies, reusable disposable blanket, ideal for campers, hunters, scout groups, and civil defense survival kits. Our shelter is located beneath the library, so we must go down. Let's do this. Our shelter is made up of 3 different size cement tunnels. From the latter, our tunnel entrance is just here to my left. We're currently standing under the front entrance of the library on Center Street. I'm about 5'4", and I need to bend a little at the knees to avoid scraping my headlamp and helmet at the top of the tunnel. Taking a look here to my left, I see 2 more tunnels. We're going to enter the tunnel to the right and continue westwardly. This tunnel is a bit more forgiving with the height. I can stand up comfortably. I also feel a nice cool draft of air, and it doesn't look like there's any moisture around at all. At the end of the tunnel, there's a light. Pun intended. There is a light switch. We are now located at the back of the building where the alleyway is located. This community shelter was designed to meet the considerations developed by the civil defense. These considerations were fallout protection factor. If properly constructed, all the shelters have a fallout radiation protection factor of at least 100, the minimum recommended by the Department of Defense. A protection factor expresses the relation between the amount of fallout radiation that would be received by an unprotected person compared to the amount a person would receive if they were inside a shelter. The second consideration was space. They need to determine the minimum amount of shelter space per person and also consider ventilation factors. Our shelter capacity was about 250 people. Then there's fire resistance. If properly constructed, shelters should have considerable resistance to external fire hazards. Lastly, they need to make sure, especially with underground shelters, that they remain reasonably dry. This shelter seems to meet a lot of the criteria, but in the event of a nuclear attack, would it protect the sheltered? Most likely, our shelter would not have been very helpful. But our government felt it was best to have a plan in place than to have the public panic. I hope you all enjoyed this brief tour of our bomb shelter. Remember, the fun doesn't stop here. The Washoe County Library System has been changing the way we provide services to the community. From new virtual story times and increasing virtual book clubs, STEAM events, and expanding our digital content. We want to keep you involved. Make sure you follow us on Facebook or Instagram for all the latest news and events. Thank you. Take care and be